Hey there, folks. This is Jared Fenwick from Nomadic Oasis, and today I will be demonstrating how to make that fishy thing. Okay, so this is the first one I ever made, and there's the second, and so on. And the tripod was on the first one, and I later modified the cam. And this one's not finished yet. As you can see. So I made this one for like a rod this size, and all the rest I made for a flat strap and a round rod. These hooks are pretty consistent since the job description is the same. I'm just showing these so that you can see there's a bit of variation involved. These are kind of a matched set. This design here, it's actually the best design I made if you're using a round rod. It's hard to describe why, but you can bring the cam farther down. What I'm trying to say is you can hang a pot right about this high or so, and the weight of the rest of the rod won't tip that off to the side and risk dumping anything. These ones, you want to leave the pot right about there. Well, the difference is about an inch. It's really not that big a deal, but just mention it because I'm all about the little details, I suppose. Okay, hi folks. What I'm doing now is making the first part in my project. It's called That Fishy Thing. So this piece of steel is 3/16 thick, and my template is 1 inch by 3 inches. So if you've got a piece of flat bar out of stainless steel, 304 or 316 is the alloy. You don't have to go 316 if you don't want to. So what I've done is I've placed the holes and I've traced this on my steel with a pencil. So I've just scribed the perimeter, and then I poked a hole in the cardboard and made a pencil line here and here, and then so I've taken this kind of a ruler works good with the cork back, and I took my scribe and cut these lines in. So I'll cut on the outside of these lines with my circular saw using a abrasive wheel, like a metal cutting blade, and that'll just block that out. Then I'm going to cut the perimeter of this mark and center punch and drill these 2 holes. This center line is for future reference, so after I've cut to these lines I can fare them out so that it looks balanced. just in case the holes wander. So I'm just going to scribe my pencil line on the perimeter here since I haven't done that yet. This allows me to cut it with the wheel, like a metal cutting wheel with a disc grinder. My pencil line won't be visible, but a sharply scribed line will be nice and bright, and I can see that with sparks flying. Okay, now you can see the bright shiny line there.
I am your father, Luke.
So I just cut that to a line, and I just very roughly cut that sharp edge off. Now it's ready for the drill press. I'll just center punch those holes and drill them out, and then I'll fuss with the appearance of it. Now that that's the practical, pragmatic part done. So I'm just going to start the pilot hole in the cam, and then I'll do the rope hanging one. So this is a 1/4 inch hole for a 1/4 inch rod, and this is just bigger. This size isn't all that important since you just want rope to go through there. So you could stop here and call it good enough. I would take a file and clean up this so it's round. I'm going to work a bit on this to get rid of more steel, which will lighten it up. I might thin this part out a bit. It has to stay thick right around here. All the rest of it could be an 1/8 inch, and it would be structurally fine. And then I'll just hammer a crescent into it, so it makes it look like the fish is jumping. Just gives it a bit more life. But you could make this a rectangle and it would work just fine. 1 inch by 3 inch, 2 holes. Call her a day. This part you're using in your fingers a lot, so If you hook your finger like that, you're going to bump your finger up against the rod and lift. So just make sure it's comfortable like that. So this is too wide, so I'm just going to narrow it down a little bit. Okay, so I just roughed it out. I thinned down the tail section just a little. And I just ground the surfaces off because they were pretty rough. It's an old piece of plate steel I had for a long time. I want to have a bit of a radius in here so that the shape is good for the rope. These tails trap that rope to maintain sort of that alignment. That's more comfortable on my finger. Still pretty hot. Okay, what I'm going to do here is just try to clean up these lines so that they kind of flow and look rather fishy. They're just appealing and smooth and not sharp. I figure you'll be staring at this thing for the next 50 years, so having nicer lines is better. Unless you got better things to do. I'm just going with the 90° to make sure these angles look alright. And then I'll do the bevels and round that out. Okay, so here's the template. And here's the product. So I kept filing there for a while. What I'm doing here is I'm cutting the perimeter line first, sort of a 90°-ish. At this point, anything I do is kind of just trying to make it look better. It'll work just fine as is right now. So I'm all finished with my course file, cutting off the grinder marks, and now I'm using a fairly sharp, smooth file and trying to get the smoothest finish that I can get. So what I'm going to do here is take my Dremel tool with well, it's a Fordham flexible shaft tool, and I have a drum sander, little one, and I'll just clean up all that surface and polish it, and then I'll take a pencil and outline a gill plate, an eye, and a mouth. This one kind of looks like a carp, so then I'll pound in all the scales, and then I'll bend the tail up. So this shape here is different on both sides. This is like the top of the head here, and that's the belly, but it fits my finger nice and comfortable. That's kind of why I did it that shape. It doesn't feel quite, it doesn't conform to my fingers on this shape as good. So that's going to determine the top. And I thinned down this section, and my countersinking disappeared. So it's thinner down the tail section here. So I'll re-countersink that and then file that as, ferret out. It won't be exactly half round, but it will look a lot better. And then I'll take a large drill bit that's nice and sharp, and I'll just stick it in there and lightly strip that 90° edge off without going deep into there at all. Okay, so here's the proceeds. So I used up 3 of these 80 grit rolls. Used them right up. The smoke does cover these in a bit of black, so like a mirror polish is really not going to be something you can notice after you used them. So I think I'm going to stop here. And that sanding drum kind of deburred that quite a bit. Oh, maybe I could do that. Oh, the angle's a bit shallow. I'm kind of going in at a 45-degree angle here. Just nipping that out. Okay, so see that slipped over these radiuses, but it won't transit a 90. So you got to lock that thing on. For all you people out there, wonder why on earth I'm making it so thick. So this is an 1/8 inch. And it works fine. So you can, that works fine as a cam. I'm putting like 15-20 pounds on there and it's locking up. But, and you lost it. So that's why we do a big fat piece of 3/16 instead of an 1/8. Structurally, this is definitely fine. You could make it smaller. This one is fine. I just come to like a big nose on there. Because if it's cold or you're using a glove, like you're using fire right, so I often wear gloves. And it's just that there's more of that in your finger. You can work this cam easy. My first one was only out to about here and it worked. Except it wasn't quite as easy to use. If you want to bend it easier, do it before you do that hole. But then it's harder to drill your hole. So when you're using this cam, the cam will lock up better with the fishtail going down. If you have the fish going like this, you've already lost a little bit of the leverage in the cam. So it's detectable that this going up is a loss in the action of the cam, but it's so small that it didn't make a difference. So personally, I think this line going up is like a smile, that is like a frown. It's very subtle, subconscious effect, but this is more cheerful. So that's why I'm doing it that way, rather than the one that physics suggests. Bit of a weird bend. I'll probably flatten it out just a hair. I'm going to try to do the thing. That's kind of what we're looking at. Got a few vice marks there. I thought I was going to get farther with that wood. It is a bit more kind on the steel, but what you're looking at is a lot more focal application of force with the vise and the punch. So there's a really small flat spot right here, and I want to put a kink in it, just a hair. This is fine though, and I kind of risk messing it up. But I'm going to give it a go just because. So I'm just putting the bolt here because that crescent won't actually clamp in the vise without straightening it out, and the bolt allows me to focalize that impact with a lot of force. So now I'm just going to put this right below the hole so that I'm not bending it at the hole, which is the weakest point. I think I want to straighten it right here because there's just a bit of a kink. So I'm going to straighten that crescent out just a little. That's about what I was looking for. Try to clean up these vice marks here. I've used a half round file, and it's okay till the teeth start showing through. A half round stick with emery cloth would probably be a good way to go. So what I forgot was I want to half round that hole, and then I'll continue the scales back to there. Taking a scrap piece of steel, my bending jig, Old Faithful, and I'm just making a few punch marks. And I'm looking at the pattern. Okay, I just punched that set of 3. So if I use my punch at an angle, it sort of makes scale type shapes. So basically I'm happy with my center punch the way it is, because I did modify it before. But if you've got a rough face on it, or it's not smooth, then just polish it up. So just polish the face, and if you got to start with a grinder, do that. I'll show you what's going on. So that's a little quieter, as well as the elastic keeping the fish from spinning around as much. I like it. It's going. I think it's going well. So on a fish, this part right here, it doesn't really have so much scales. a second punch in the same hole. See if I could make it better, and it worked. I kind of feel like you want to keep a bit of randomness here. I did a really methodical version before and it didn't look very real. I've made the pectoral fin there before, but I don't think I'm going to do that this time. I just had a thought. I kind of wanted to start a crescent here and work backwards. But if the spacing didn't work out, it would make a crease line, which would look really bad. So I thought it was worth mentioning that start at one side and keep going. Ooh. I did not do anything about rounding this rope hole. I forgot I had intended to give that a half round. If I modify it, it's going to change my scale pattern. Before I go any further, I'm going to get rid of that. I just don't like it. Just have to call that some weight saving measures here. Instead of I screwed up and had to erase it. That would be awkward, right? This is stainless steel from a crab pot or a crab fishing trap that was beat up and washed up on the beach and abandoned, and so it was salvaged. Now we're going to make the elevator rod out of that. So use a wooden mallet on a wooden firewood round to straighten out the larger wobbles or bends. Use a steel hammer to straighten out the smaller bends. We still have a lot of obvious bends here, so I'm just twisting the rod, hammering, twisting, hammering. They're still pretty easy to find here. So in order to find smaller bends, we just roll the rod. It speeds up how fast it moves and makes it more obvious to find them. So now we're going to sight down the rod, find a bend, then hammer it out and repeat the process. And then feel for any bends. Your hands are sensitive and can feel small wobbles that you can't see so easily. So in this next step, I'm going to straighten out the loops on the end, but if I straighten them out, then bend my hook, I may give it metal fatigue and snap it, so I'm not going to use that section for part of my project. I'm going to use it for leverage and then cut it off as a waste piece. I got a nice pretty smooth rod here, and I got the most beat up old crab pot I ever saw. It had this real nasty looking surface finish on there. We'll call it a patina, but it doesn't deserve the name. So I ripped that off, draw filing it, and then some emery cloth, and it looks way better. Here, I'll show you. So it's moving nice and clean, and it locks up instantly. So that's what we're looking for, and that's all we need. You don't need a brand new piece of rod. You know, I hammered this one smooth the same as that one. It's not perfect, but it's So this is my workstation. I like to work close to the ground, and in the sunlight helps me see the smallest bends and wobbles. I'm using a steel hammer and anvil here because I can straighten out the smallest kinks and wiggles. That's a longer bow that I'm taking out on the wood. The steel is for shorter ones. You can see a lot of that wobble's taken out. Getting harder to find a wobble. It's not perfect, but it's good enough. When I'm actually finished all the bending of the pot hook and the handle, I can retune up the straight part. It gets a little wobble from the bending. I'm going to call that good. So this is what I'm making. So I got about 2 inches waste on the handle part. 2 inches waste here. For the hook end, I only needed 2 inches, but I did use a lot more. But if you have a foot coming off here, it makes a world of difference bending it. If the center of your pot handle happens to be in the center of your hook, it hangs better, and it sort of swings and moves a lot better than, like if you hang your pot on this side, it wants to bend the rod in the air, you know, it doesn't work as good that way. So that's why I offset it. A wire bell pot wants to slide into the middle there. Make your gap width wide enough for your pot handle. The idea with this little hook here, it just helps guide that bail on there easier. I'm going to do this pointy bit here first. This is my first bend here. So this is kind of what it's going to look like. So I'm going to cut it off at my mark here. And I'm going to do a hard bend right here. So okay, so this part here I thinned down a little. So there's a bit of meat on the outside here and here in my bend. So I decided to use my jig. Since the last time I did it without a jig, I had to use just a vise and then a pipe. It's kind of a nightmare. I'm just cutting this face of the nut here, so it'll let me fit this rod in here. Trying to cut the nut with the face on a bit of an angle that way, because the bolt bends backwards. So I have to compensate a little bit. Well, I should mark that. Just in case I bump it out of there again. I'm going to place that. For instance. Ooh, that's just not going very tight. Oh, that was tighter. Kind of overbent it a little, which is good. Yeah, I'm really wondering if I needed all this extra piece. Okay. So this part is non-negotiable. Okay. So this pot handle has to comfortably sit in there. And if it's too tight, then you're out of luck. Well, you can't see my mark, I bet. Well, my mark is... Okay. That is about where my mark is. See, that's the edge of my mark. It's about there. I'd say it's just a hair larger. So go tighten up the hook a little bit. That's pretty comfortable in there. That's what you want. My gosh, I can't believe how easy this is compared to no jig. Okay, I think I'm going to stipulate you got to build a jig. Well, not a must, but it's a sensible thing to do. This angle right here is too acute, so I'm just backing it out a little now. Huh. Okay. Okay, so I'm working on this angle, and I'm going to bring this back this way. My angle is going to be about like that. Still not enough, but it's close. Okay, that's very close. I'm going to flatten that a little. A little bit out of alignment there. Not that important though. A lot of this bending is trial and error. Just keep looking until the angles line up. Just focalize the bending force right on the rod. I think I need a little more, but okay, so I'm using my hip to lock that in the vise. Got my fencing pliers so I can get all my power as close as I can. So that's what we got, and it doesn't look right. Well, what I mean by that is the bends are in the right spot, but we got some tweaking to do. I just put a washer and a nut on there to keep that from falling on the floor. Now I'm just going to bend by eye. Let's see if I can't make this look better. I did put a radius on the bottom of that hook. What I was trying to do is put an arc to the bottom of that, because a wire bell pot wants to slide into the middle there. So this angle here has got to be at 90 degrees to that. It isn't. Well, if your standards on image are really low, this would be very easy. You want some nice lines. If you're prepared to spend some more time. There is another problem that you got. It'll fit in there, but this is not acceptable. So you got to make sure that this pot can go in that spot at 90 degrees. Pretty close. So when your pot is horizontal, this needs to be able to slide in there without this changing from vertical nor your pot tipping. This is not how you want it to go in. So I got it right there. So now the question is it pretty enough? So we're done as far as functional goes. I could probably cut that off now. I'm going to cut that a bit. And when the smoke clears, there it was. The idea with this little hook here, it just helps guide that bail on there easier. It should be angled up some so that it's wants to help it fall in there. No two are ever exactly the same in this method. Okay, so we're almost done here. What I'm up to now, this bend here, I like the way that bends. This one I don't like how it bent, so I want to take the bend back a ways, but it's not going to do that as it is. This is too strong right here, so I want the bend right here. So I'm going to have to thin down the steel right here and right here in order to bend that over. Just the strength of the steel won't allow it to bend like that. That's an appearance thing. Oh, that looks better. Just got to thin the back down. And then we can move the metal. So now I got the two-dimensional side done. Still looks a little odd. I'm just going to round it out some. Like take the sharp corners off. So I just cleaned it up a little. Now I can put the rest of that shape on, and then I'll finish the filing and cleaning up all the burrs and nicks, and then I'll hammer this straight, and then I'll just bend that handle down. So then what we do is we draw file all these marks off, file that nice emery cloth it. So you don't have to get all that fussy before you're ready to clamp that handle down, then it matters. That helps. I need a bit more color contrast to see the gap. I'd have thought straight was such a prize. Well, I'm almost done. It's not like taking that long. You take care of these things, you just don't bend them. This stuff is pretty strong. I'm just going to sight down there. It's a bit of a longer bow. Can't tell if you can see what's going on there, but okay, I'm gonna call that good enough. It's pretty straight. Maybe I'll just run my, I'll draw file that. I'm gonna make sure that there's no burrs. This part is important because you really do need that. You need that slipping really clean. Like when this rod gets any soot on there, it gums it up a little. And if you get a nick, it's going to hang up. Just feeling for coarse spots. Anything you might want to get rid of. Now remember, a little draw filing goes a long way as far as emery cloth goes. It'll save a lot of time with the sanding. Unless you got like a fine grit belt sander. So here's a point should probably be mentioned. You only got to make 3 of these per household, right? Unless you got a big house. So even if you spend a ridiculous amount of time making these things, you only do it once in your life, right? And it's not like this is ever going to have to happen again. So a little bit of extra time on the fiddly bits doesn't make any difference. I think I care how hard it was to make the first one 10 years ago. I don't remember. It was hard. That's what I remember. The word, hard. I don't feel the pain. Oh, how nice. It's like a baby's bottom. Okay. So that's good. Next thing. I need to make sure that there's no burrs. So I did do this part already. Once it's on there, you'll never be able to do this again. So get it right. It's just the most gentle of deburring. I ended up liking this fish not having a mouth. Make sure the back is good too. And you're going to try to cut this burr without chatter. You know, when you get that washboard effect when you're scraping something, because that makes it kind of serrated. Okay. Now, just gonna do it really fine. Mostly a verification that everything is smooth in there, but I'm just trying to make sure that it shines, just like feather light. Okay, now for the test. Once this is all together, it sort of keeps itself burnished. Kind of smear polish the steel. What's going on here? There's fishy going on. You can open that hole up a little and not have to worry it won't work. What I saw there reminded me of fouling on a gun, like a lead or copper fouling on the inside of your barrel. Just like a streak. Quite a bit of dust coming out of here. It's a good thing I checked. If you're doing this mass production, you know, once you get your system down, you should be able to knock them out pretty quick. I'm kind of doing the fancy model. I guess I should clarify that in 10 years since I finished my other ones, in this section, I'll show bending the handle down and locking the fish on the rod. All the previous ones I did, I used in a vise, or I bent them down in a vise. It makes a nice crisp 90-degree bend. I tried using the jig that I've been showing you, and it turned out badly. It made a radius 90, which the fish fell off and kept falling off, and it was really hard to actually make it work right and stay on. So I'm trying to show you how to do it right while using footage of me doing it wrong, and it's difficult, so bear with me. This one's 15 inches. I want to make this one a little bit longer than that one. Just made my mark. About 16 and a half inches. Okay, now I'm going to slide that cam on. Make sure the hook is down and the fish is up, so that we see all that pretty work that we did. Okay, the hook is coming at me. The hook and the handle go to the same direction. I'm going to stick a level on the hook. If you miss, you can absolutely twist these straight. Oh, it can't come off. So what I did is I used the pliers to pre-tension that rod, and then I hammered it up against the edge of the vise. So now we've won, and as far as we've got the rod captured. So the rest is ergonomics and appearance. So I'm just going to put a little bit of an arc on here. Isn't life full of delightful surprises? Okay, so it fell on the floor again. So I don't even know how that come off. I had to try pretty hard to get that back on. I come up with an adaptation here. Okay, so I just took a file. The tang is nice and soft, so I won't snap my tang off the file. I rounded the corners off just a bit to be a little more kind. And I jammed it up as far as I can in the corner. Now I'm going to try to bend that, and that should provide all the force after here. We'll see how that goes. So now we're less than 90 degrees. It's not looking as secure as I would like, so I should say why I'm having this trouble. What I'm trying to show is the gap around that rod. If you have a tighter gap, this would be less of a problem. So when you chamfer that edge, if you do it too far, it's really going to give you problems. For example, the ones I'm having. I might have got it. Sometimes you want to rattle this without force, and sometimes that'll do things that force won't do. You gotta be sure it's not going to fall off on you. If it falls on the floor, no biggie. If you drop it in the woods, that's it. So, what's going to tell you when it's right feels nice. Wow. That's disturbing. See, I never compared those two, and I made it feel nice on my hand, and the angle is exactly the same. Okay, so my hand told me I got it right, and my hand told me I got it right last time, and look how close they are. So that's what ergonomics is. Your body tells you what's right. Okay, so now the next factor is, are we going to go for a 2 or a 3 finger grip? See, that's like 2.5. So I'm making this one a little bit longer and a little bit heavier because I'm thinking of using my pressure canner with this one, which is going to be 18 1-pound jars. Okay, so here, if you got big hands, size it to your hands. Don't be asking somebody else. So the radius is kind of 2 fingers. You can see that. Anyway, so I'll bend it down there a little, pre-tensioning the rod. It feels a little weird. But I like to put a little upward bend. I'm going to put a bit of a back bend down here. In case it hits a finger there, it's not on a point. Kind of looks nice too, I think. I'm not going to worry about the vice teeth marks there since I'm going to file that a bit anyway. It is more comfortable. I'm going to do a full 3 fingers on this since it's for a pressure canner, which is, you know, for a cooking pot, it's really heavy. So now I'll just cut that off. I decided to fuss a little more. Well, so no two people have the same shape of hands. Of course, there's similarities, right? So you probably want to size this to different hands. Well, that's feeling pretty good. I'm going to cut that off now. That's still hot. That looks all right. Just going to clean the radius off that and make it flatter so it sits on my hand a little flatter. It is more comfortable. going to put a bit of a radius in there to make it look. Now just clean up the tool marks and we're good to go. Now the next part I'm just going to sit down in some good lighting and do a little bit of fussing around. Yeah, I do like that. Gives me a good strong 3-fingered grip.